Welcome to Pacific Northwest Farmer Cooperative Market Update for July 14th. We're going to cover the crop report that came out, or stocks report. Before we get going, make a little introduction. I'm Randy Olstead, and this is Trudi Allenbaugh and Shane Riebel. So there's a little disclaimer. Trudi, you want to help me with that?
Yeah, just want to make sure everybody knows the views and opinions of this program is of the hosts alone and is for informational purposes only. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
Thank you, Trudi.
Welcome.
Well, I guess I'm going to start with Shane. We had some stocks report that came out, and so how does it really affect the oilseed market, Shane?
It was kind of a null on that side. There wasn't much changes. I honestly kind of expected to see a little bit of mix-up between corn and beans, and they went unchanged on both production or yield, so there wasn't really much sparks flying there. So on the report side of things, it's kind of, people are reading in between the lines. Sounds like a lot of traders are kind of looking towards that August report to see some changes on the bean side of things and see if that starts mixing some stuff up just via the report.
When you saw some talk about more of the tax incentives and stuff for some of the biofuels and those kind of things, how do you think that's going to affect the canola and some of that bean support?
I think it's going to be very positive. With the Trump's big, beautiful bill that just got passed, there's some 45Z stuff on the renewable fuels and kind of the credits that they're going to do. A little bit of push-pull because there was a max credit that you could get for $1.75, which is now capped at $1. However, they did put in wording that limits only food stocks or production to become from U.S., Mexico, or Canada. So definite big win for U.S. producers there. I know the Iowa soybean farmers were big proponents of this, and there was a Maine senator out of Iowa that was kind of pushing a lot of this. Along with some extra credits, they doubled the small producer credit from 10 cents to 20 cents, which I think they can add on to that dollar
later. Okay.
because they're small biodiesel producers. So definitely, a little bit of push and pull, but overall, I think the big beautiful bill and the renewables are going to be a positive thing. It's just going to take us a little time to start seeing them.
Randy, do you think that it'll take the USDA into some of those later reports to really start moving some of that use around for
They
that
won't move until next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if we start seeing this demand pick up like we think, they're very reluctant to really, mess with the residual or the end use or the crush. I mean, just look what they did this last month.
Yeah.
They increased biofuels by, 160 billion gallons. It was a huge number. It was just like, we waited till the last day of the last month of the last year to make something happen, and that's just typical government stuff. But demand will be driven by basis. So if we start seeing that basis, especially for canola, start moving up a little bit more, that's when things are getting done.
Because the EPA projections that they came out with last month, those actually don't start into place. So part of it on 25, but then go into place in 26 and 27. So you could maybe see USDA work its way into having a balance sheet at the end where it wants to kind of maybe start bumping some of those biofuel
the proof's
usage.
in the pudding. They want to see it gone before they even print it. And, and when it's gone, then everybody already knows about it. So it's not worth the paper it's printed on. So that's a little disappointing there. But the other thing as far as soybeans too is the fact that, the overall, production of soybeans looks to be a little bit lower, but that's a wild card too. We got to see. We got a lot of growing left to do before we get in the bend and see what that looks like too. So, well, we're going to jump into the wheat side of things. And Trudi, what did you think of the report on the wheat side?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. A few things were interesting about the wheat side. One thing, this was the first snapshot that we got to see the wheat by class breakdown, and white wheat specifically, you saw that balance sheet change a little bit at the end of May, when was the last ending stocks projected. They had white wheat for 24-25 crop at 67 million, and they adjusted that because of some less exports or more exports, but a little less use, and they kind of used that balance sheet moved around. So they got it at 80 million for carry-in. So, we could argue that number all day long, whether it's there or not. I think it's a little high. But then also, that puts a pretty good, healthy ending stock projection for white wheat for 25-26 at 93. got exports right now at 190. And, that feels like it's maybe not enough when you go from 222 for 24 crop. But at the pace we have right now and price, I don't know if 190 is reachable today, but
I get a lot of grief for this, but it's, phase one, China, 2020. I don't know how many people I've talked to about that.
Show me the money, Randy.
They bought 2 million metric tons of white wheat during harvest. I'm praying on both knees that happens again. But it's possible. But is it probable? Probably not at this point in time. But it's definitely something out there. But you're spot on, Trudy. I mean, look at the production side of it. 289 million bushel. I know that the Palouse isn't looking all that great, but you were still probably going to be in that average ballpark. Spring crops are going to be below average. But look at the rest of PNW. I guess it's not as bad as I think it is. But we're kind of sitting in the worst spot right now, I think. But and then exports. I mean, we got our traditional business. We're always going to have our traditional business, but it's those swing countries, Indonesia, China, the Philippines. You need more of that. But with the Black Sea, Korean. But, if the Black Sea becomes aggressive or, if, Trump's going to play hardball with Putin, what's that mean? We shutting down the Black Sea again or we, whatever. But, it's a lot of hype in the market. But, Russia, Ukraine news doesn't move the market like it once did. And we're kind of getting numb to it.
Yeah.
And so
inspections for wheat really for the last couple of weeks have been one of the stars of the, going. So we are on pace. So, I mean, never say never. And it does feel like it's building to a Trump year maybe of like 2020 and so I'm not going to say it can't happen, but I'm still a little skeptical on that.
It's not there yet, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing too is corn with the corn production numbers, they were definitely a little friendly to the marketplace. I mean the production was off a little bit, about 100 million bushels, but we're going to need that corn number being very firm for white wheat to become a feed grain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help white wheat at all if corn goes to $3. That's where white will go to get the business gone. So hopefully, we can get that corn number being firmed and move on from there.
Yeah, the report to me felt friendly wheat. All the numbers were towards the end of the expectations, or if not lower. One thing that we kind of looked at too, but it still kind of sticks out to me is that even though you see from the June report to the July wheat balance sheet number getting lower, it's still 190 million. That's still a pretty big number. And, like same thing with the wheat by class, they got hard winter ending balance at 431. That's a huge number. I mean, so at what point in time, here in white wheat world, do we segregate a little bit from that? How do you compete? You got to be feed. If that all of a sudden gets cheapened up, there's just all those ifs. And so it's going to be an interesting year for sure.
Okay. Well, as far as outlook, I'm just going to kind of switch back over to Shane. Where you think your outlook is? Has that changed at all for canola?
Not really. I think, like we talked earlier, it's going to be a while before we see some of these effects. So I'm still betting on this $19.50, $20 range. We're a little below it today, but I think that's kind of where we're going to trade here August, Sep, for a lot of canola for new crop. On the wheat side, I think it's going to be within 10 cents, really waiting for the August 1st with the trade deals that have been talked about. I know that's the deadline before we start increasing the rate on especially EU and Mexico. So, I mean, hopefully, maybe someday we'll have an agreement on something, but I think it's getting a little bit harder now, or some teeth are starting to show, so.
Okay, Trudi.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Feels like we're kind of still range bound, trading in that trading weather. There's a lot of time between this corn crop getting done, the harvest of wheat getting done. So to me, I think it's kind of choppy. Cash markets really have remained firm, and I think you're going to have those opportunities with some basis levels because of volatility on futures with trade wars, deadlines coming, EU. Mexico was what I just was reading right before that. I mean, everybody wants to get a deal done. They're really, I think, are moving in that way. It's just what are the details of that? How much does that affect grain is going to be the big question. But to me, you look at world values, they've remained fairly firm. As long as that happens, I think we're still range bound.
I would agree. I mean, there's an old adage, and I want to be politically correct here, or at least, PC as far as, the market's going to go where the most people can lose the most money. Okay. And so, and what I mean by that is the fact that, we're kind of in limbo. We get anything below 615, 620, we start getting some business, people start buying it. Get anything above that, we lose to somebody else. And so we're kind of sitting in that limbo range. And it's mainly because, the producer or our customer doesn't want to sell it. Right, he needs some more money, and then the exporter side of it, he doesn't know if he can buy it or not, and so he doesn't want to sell any cheaper than that. Right, so it's that balance there before harvest starts, and then the market gets pushed. But will it? I mean, it's as far as we have a little under 10% of stocks carry over. But if you believe these USD numbers as far as how much white wheat we have, we've argued about this for 30 years, where it's probably 30 to 40 million bushels overstated. But it's so it's I don't want to beat the federal government up. It's the numbers we got to trade. But those are things that make me nervous. And like I said, I agree with everybody here that I think we're range bound. But if we start getting a lot of selling pressure, our market's going to go lower until we get to a feed market situation. But we're going to need a country like China or Indonesia buying a lot, or some kind of surprise swing country to come in and to move our markets higher. So we're probably flat.
Yeah.
So. Okay. And closing thoughts.
The only other thing I was going to talk about a little bit was the USDA usually doesn't adjust the corn production number in this report, so I left that alone. A lot of market chatter about how good the conditions are, and if that corn yield is going to be bigger than 181. And then on the flip side of that, the USDA has not projected it correctly. It's been lower for the last 6 years on that corn number. So there's all this stuff going, it's going to be 185. It could be even bigger than that. And then it's like, well, they're already calling it 181. Maybe it's going to be less than that. So corn is king. It's going to be lots and lots of what that corn number comes in. So take opportunities when you see them. I think there is going to have some chance on cash being a good number here and there, and basis too. So take opportunities when you see them. Scale in.
I'd agree. Shane?
I was thinking here a couple minutes ago, we talked about the price. We're pretty blessed being 75-cent basis, 50-cent Octave Dees basis here this close to harvest. I mean, I don't think a lot of people want to recognize that as a blessing, but, we're getting pretty lucky right now. So,
take advantage of some of that.
Take advantage. We get 5-10 more cents. Yeah.
Is that more demand or just a lack of participation from the marketplace? I think we're getting lulled into this. The market owes me this, right? And then once we start seeing that, the producer selling, you could see this basis run away from you pretty quickly. But I agree with you 100%. A 75-cent September basis or August basis is historically pretty good. So, well, anyway, that's what we have for today. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.